All right, we've got some technical issues, so we are recording the meeting, but the live stream will be put up later, but those zooming in can still do. Yes, right, okay. So with that, we welcome Councillor Burden, who is on Zoom. Welcome, Riley. We'll move through to apologies. Apologies, we have Councillor Beard, Francois Tamahoe, and Brian Malera. Right, somebody please accept those apologies. Thank you, Councillor Neal. Seconded. Sorry, Councillor Bobs. Thank you. Declaration of interest. Your registers are there. If you can please stay up to date with those. Keep them current. We appreciate it. Health and safety. Exit door here and here. But this door here, please, if an evacuation in instance of an emergency situation, please avoid the elevator and the front staircase. Please use the exit door from here through to there and then down those stairs to the outside assembly area. Toilets are out that door, and then just on the hallway around the corner if anybody needs those. And with that, we welcome everybody to the meeting. So with that, to keep things to time, we will move on to the staff report, please, from Leslie. Oh, sorry, Emma. Sorry, Emma.
Good morning, Mayor and Councillors. I would like to take the report as read, and we can, if you would like, you could move on to receiving the submissions from the people who have requested to provide a verbal submission, and you may, as the guidelines that we provide to do, ask them questions, clarify about the submissions that they are putting in.
Thank you, Emma.
Thank you.
So before we call on our first submitter, I'd just like to remind councillors first and foremost that there's no opportunity to ask questions. You can ask for political clarification. This is not the time for questions and engagement in that aspect. Clarification points only, and for spares you have 10 minutes. So just be mindful of that if you're wanting to get your points across. Use the time wisely and well. Does anybody have any questions on the house that we run before we do start? Pretty clear on process. Right, so with that we will call our first submitter, which is Anthony Keenan, please.
Good morning, Council, and the last time I spoke to you here was 2020, and I reminded you then about your significance and engagement policy. I believe that I should have the right to speak, not pointed to points and only be able to speak to those points. You are breaching the Bill of Rights Act. I oppose your draft annual plan because I will go straight to where you are failing in consultation when changing a long-term plan. Before I start though, because of the issues over Stafford Cemetery, I will give you the archaeological protection sites. I would remind you to go to New Zealand Heritage and assign the Stafford Cemetery to the New Zealand Heritage. Westland Heritage is not up with the play. There is also a photo of our descendants going up the hill in a cortege funeral. Do not meddle with our heritage.
Anthony, if I could just interrupt you, you are required when you're speaking to the submission to speak to the points that are in the submission.
Yes, I'm going straight to point, failing consultation. Your significance and engagement policy, where you are breaching. The purpose of the Western District Council significance and engagement policy is to enable the authority and its communities to identify the degree of significance attached to particular issues, to provide clarity and about how we and the communities can expect to be engaged about different issues, assets or matters, to articulate the relationship between significance of a matter and the corresponding level of engagement of parties that is required. Significance. Significant. What are your priorities? So I'm asking you today, who is on your health board? Who is on primary health care? Who is your Western District Council representative to primary health? Significance, right up here. We're above the crown. We're going to conscience. Conscience, collaboration, communication, consultation. Significance is respect to the degree of importance of the policy. It's not about playgrounds down here. It's above that. You have to govern properly, otherwise your community is out of order. So now you're going to this plan, which you're putting in a lot of figures to it. Significant changes to the long-term plan. Spending increase in this draft annual plan. Who gave you the permission to do that? 931,000 to a cycle trail. 449,000 Paki Waitara. We spoke about this in 2020. A building purchase well before the ratepayers knew about it. Already called Paki Waitara, and the museum was going to be shifted to it. What is it for? It's a white elephant. 2.8 million going into the swimming pool against 1.255 million in the long-term plan. Year 3, you are changing figures in a long-term plan without going out to special consultation. You're breaching. $1 million playground going into year 3 figures. Where's it coming from? It's coming from the ratepayers or the taxpayers' purse. My small business, and I can't even get a drain cleaned out there. 443,000 to a skate park. Why are you putting that in? Stop. Stop now. These are significant amounts, and you are spending funds from tax-paid monies for your own projects. Who gave you the authority to do that? So I'm opposing you. I'm standing here and I'm saying no. No to the layers of bureaucrats. No to putting another reporting entity in place. No to not applying depreciation to our 3 waters. Maureen Pugh Council did that. They tried that. They went into austerity depreciation, didn't fund it. Within 6 months, there had to be a local government fix-it person come in. How long were they here? We had to pay for that and bring back the depreciation. This council is out of order. Don't try and fabricate, don't try and take me through to the courts, because I will stand above that. I will judge the judges. I've already had local government commission here. The local government commission was asked for cost-effective efficiency. You are not carrying out that. Restructure the government, restructure the layers. New Zealand is out of order. And you are condoning the raises in cost of living. That is my opposition to what is happening in this country.
Thank you, Mr. Bishop. So we'll go on to Diane and John. Diane is here, John's not.
Thank you, Diane. I'd like to come forward.
Tēnei mihi kia koutou katoa, mihi mahana, kia koutou, whanau nei, hei, oiro, kia koutou kōrero. I think I put in a pretty good submission anyway for the toilets in Orchard. And my argument was taken from out of this document, the long-term plan. All the things that I put in my submission have come out of here. So you actually say in the submission, in this long-term plan, what we in Orchard need to have in terms of health and the public toilets. So it's already there, all the words are already there. And that's really my kōrero, but I want to say that I'm proud to be a squeaky wheel. I'm proud to be part of a community who's prepared to stand up and be a squeaky wheel, and we'll keep on squeaking until we get the wheel. Kia ora rā.
Thank you, Diane. Does anybody have any clarification they'd like from Diane on her submission?
Thank you very much, Diane, for that, your submission. The feedback is reaching those within this right? And I think the relationship has been a positive one of meeting and moving forward. So we thank you. We thank all of the members of Aotearoa for their submissions and their passion on their situation there. We'll move on to Anne Daniels, please. Thanks, Anne.
Kia ora koutou, I'm Anne Daniel, a fibre artist, a member of Westland Arts Incorporated, WY, and also with Creative Fibre. Since my written submission to the proposed charge for the Carnegie Gallery, I've conferred with these groups, along with West Street's Art for Me program and the Hukataka Art Group, and have been asked to represent them today as well. So in all, I'm representing about 150 members of the creative community. Art, craft and creativity are vital for community wellbeing and are an important part of Westland's identity, reputation and economy. Many artists and craftspeople live and work in our district. Hokitika, as the largest town, needs a community space for our locally based artists to exhibit and sell their work. After consultation with the groups, the key needs of the arts community have been identified as the space needs to be accessible to the arts community as well as to visitors. So this means it needs to be in a central location, physically accessible and, most of all, affordable. And the space needs to be fit for purpose, have plenty of wall space, gallery lighting, display plinths and adequate heating and humidity control. Now the Carnegie Gallery, as part of the museum, fulfilled these requirements admirably. It was used for exhibitions from when it reopened in 1996 until it was closed for the earthquake strengthening. Most of the people I represent here today have exhibited work in the Carnegie Gallery, either on their own or as part of a group. Hokitika Art Group, in conjunction with the Hokitika Floral Art Group, WY and Creative Fibre, all held regular exhibitions to showcase their members' work. Art for Me was established after the gallery closed, and they are exhibiting annually in Greymouth because there's not space available in Hokitika. There's not been a suitable replacement space in Hokitika for exhibitions since the closure. Now, an exhibition space is not the same as a meeting space and should not be charged as a meeting space. Community halls and meeting rooms are not suitable for properly curated exhibitions as they do not have hanging systems, lighting or neutral walls. The nearest suitable exhibition space is actually the Left Bank Gallery in Greymouth, where local groups and artists had to go to exhibit work on the West Coast. In response to the closed Carnegie Gallery, Y approached the library to collaborate on the Art at the Library program. Over the past 2.5 years, about 10 local artists have displayed artworks on the 2.4 by 1.2 metre panel in the front left corner of the library, and I hope you will manage to see some of these. Art at the Library is a joint initiative between Y and the library, and the library's, Y is grateful to the library for making the space available to display work. But it's very small and it's not a substitute for a gallery exhibition space. Westland Creative Fibre recently held an exhibition in the old Oliver's building down the road here, but the shop fittings were still in place and the lighting they used was plug-in lamps that the members supplied. So we've all been really looking forward to the museum reopening and having an exhibition space like the Carnegie Gallery once again. The space needs to be affordable. The exhibitions are set up for at least 1 week, and more often it's going to be 2 or 3 weeks. We can't pay $60 an hour for this. These proposed charges, plus the extra for after-hours staff time and cleaning, are far too expensive to use as an exhibition space and will put this out of reach of local artists and community groups. In my submission, I showed what this rate could look like for a week. If it's, let's say it's open 6 hours a day, that was a figure, could be any, it might be more or less than that, but let's say 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, that's going to be $1,800 a week. $2,500 a week if it was to be open 7 days. Now, I'm sure you can do the maths as well as I can, what that will look like for a 2 or 3 week exhibition, well into the thousands. As residents, we're already paying for the space in our rates, and this should be reflected in the charging structure. It could be that we have a lower rate for locals. Now, we do not expect to use the gallery for free to exhibit work, but we just request that an affordable rate be set. Now, whether that's on a weekly basis or commission from sales or a combination of both, but definitely not on an hourly basis as is done for a meeting or event space. An hourly charging rate for exhibitions is also completely out of line with other similar gallery spaces in New Zealand. We've not come across any that charge for exhibitions at an hourly rate. Y and myself in our submissions have given some examples of other charging regimes. We're not looking for anything new here, just getting back what we had access to before the strengthening work on the museum was begun, or equivalent, and at a realistic and affordable rate. It makes sense that the council would consult with the arts community before this happens. Had we been consulted, we would not be here today describing the differences between charges for an exhibition space and for a meeting room. And Y are offering to be available for consultation on an ongoing basis for this and for the redevelopment of the museum with an exhibition space. So in conclusion, we're asking the Western District Council to reconsider the proposed hourly rate for the Carnegie Gallery because it's not appropriate or affordable for a gallery exhibition space. And we're asking to be part of the conversation and process going forward. As representatives of the creative arts community in Westland, it's important that our voices are heard. So thank you for listening to us today. Sure.
Thank you, Anne. It's a very good submission with excellent examples that you've set in place regarding other entities and how the charges work. And it's a very reasoned approach, and I thank you for that. Does anybody have any points of clarification they'd like from Anne?
Yeah, thanks, Anne.
Would you like to come back?
Yeah, sorry.
Just part of the Carnegie building, which space are you talking about that's adequate for you?
Well, in the prior to the stretching, it was in the main Carnegie Gallery. Now,
Which is on the eastern side, is it?
yeah, the big, the eastern front.
Eastern front.
Yes, yes,
Thank you.
yeah,
Cheers.
yes. We know that in the redevelopment
Yeah.
stuff, that may not be the thing, but I guess part of our thing
Yeah.
is we're also hoping that there needs to be something somewhere in
Yeah.
that and that, but, you know, the main thing was the charging rate at the moment. And of course, it's all a bit of a, you know, it's a bit irrelevant kind of at the moment because it's not even open, so it's not in use, but we wanted to make sure that you're aware of that kind of.
Once again, thank you, Anne. Cheers.
Is there any? Thank you.
And can I just clarify, so the arts community wasn't consulted about where the art gallery is going to go back? And also that your point that the Left Bank Art Gallery doesn't charge for exhibitions at all? It's interesting.
No, so they used to charge $160 a week, and that and then they dropped that. So that's council owned, that gallery, yeah, they don't. It's run by volunteers, so they don't. You know, there's not a you know, it's not a staff charge to it. Somehow they managed to make that work. So here, prior to the closing, the Carnegie Gallery here was $60 a week or higher, and there was a commission. There was a commission on sales as well.
Can I just clarify, so they are charging the commission on sales?
At the Left Bank?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. They charge. On sales.
And, sorry, thanks for your submission. Just to clarify the sort of arts community, as it were, exhibiting paintings with the hobbyists, professionals, how would you sort of break down this?
Oh, it's a range. It's a range. Yep, yeah. So some would be making a living from their art, but most, especially when you have the group exhibition, that's a wide range of people in that community. Yeah.
Any further clarification? Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much.
Jared, please.
Good morning, Council. Gallery. So I'm here back again, as we were at the last meeting, last year, on the same subject of toilets. And the reason being is that some people seem to think that there's no necessity for toilets in Terra to be established. But I'm here to tell you different possible facts. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you, Helen and Simon and Jane and Ashley and for coming out and having a look for yourselves, taking the time. That was really appreciated by us. It's really good. You get to see firsthand sort of the need. I just want to, I've got a lot to say because there's a lot being said. I've put in my submission and it's based on the need in Alterra on relation to the geography of the place and the amount of people coming through. The geography is obvious. It's a narrow gorge, closed at any one time for any number of reasons. And we have a lot of people who start to get up and they require toilets. I've done a few figures from, got the figures, well, actually for the last 3 years from when I created, and every single day, and it was quite amazing at the numbers that come through. So over the year, there's 610,200 odd vehicles come through, and just working it out at 1.5 persons per car, that's probably, getting up in the 1.23 million mark. That channel through here, out of the gorge. And they need a toilet, stops on different occasions, obviously, and children. And I want to point out too that the 3 splits that go, once they come through our town, so we get far more people coming through our town than coming through your town, so we've got 5 toilets. And they go through Greynoe, and they also split, go through Milan up through Rickham. Back that way, the same ways too, so they come back through our parts if they're not going through harsh works. So yeah, 610,000 cars was quite surprising. That is a lot of people coming through that some say it might be, not needed to have a toilet there. Well, I can tell you this because we have people, I've brought this up before, we have people stopping at our drive, walking up our drives with toilet rolls, and I don't think you guys would have had that. I've mentioned this in my submission. And I've mentioned also the need in highlighting in winter, when we have snow, now for that customary, there was stop all traffic going through. We used to once plough the roads and never used to close the roads, but now it's stopped. So everyone lines up, traffic lining up past our place, which we're a long way from the yard. Well, I've seen it 1.3 kilometres going our way. And I've seen it, I was told by someone who was up at the end of the line and up as far, so that it was 3 kilometres long, even right past Temple Basin because of an incident on the road at Rockpool. So a lot of cars, so we can't deal with that, but we can deal with them in our own, we can deal with them in our own town, with people that keep now popping out their cars and having to go and find a loop, and they can't find it. So out of that 610,000 cars, there's 2 events. You've got Wild Foods and you've got Coast to Coast, and out of that, numbers are 11,282 for the Coast to Coast, because we have some of the guests there, thousands of guests too, by the way. They come from, most of 95% come from overseas, so we're booking internationally. Thousands stay in our little place, that's not counting the hotel putting up there, thousands. Out of that 11,282, we estimate the vehicles, because we have 2 competitors in our lodge and the rest of the support crew. So we'll always have about 10 people, 2 of them competing. So the numbers are around 30-odd thousand that will be passing through on that event. On Wild Foods, there's 6,000 odd vehicles came through when I looked up the numbers, counting increasing and decreasing, 6,000 vehicles plus, and that equates to about 20,000 people total. So we're looking at 55,000 people just in 2 events. That's the main point of what I'm saying. That's just in a 3-day and the Coast to Coast. A lot of people that need somewhere to go for the loop. That's why we're pushing for this. It's not about, it would be nice, though I totally agree, it would be nice. It'd be nice not to have people coming into our properties and using our backyards as toilets. It'd be real nice. And the fact is that the West Coast town of Aotearoa, because we are part of the West Coast, I've been bantied off a bit in the past, but we are the doorway to all your towns. They all come through, and that is the first town they see. So we want to brighten it up a bit, and by being courteous enough to at least provide people with public toilet. Needed. I've heard that there's a TIF application going on, that would be great. And I appreciate, Simon, you at the meeting clarifying the retraction on the 460,800 price that was put out to the public. And Simon retracted that at the meeting we had in Aotearoa. And we estimate it'd be somewhere less than 300,000, probably even lower than that, probably around 200 or 250 or somewhere around that to get it all done. So yeah, appreciate it. If we can scare people away and start to throw a bit of flake our way and say, well, Aotearoa conserved toilet. Well, I'll point out again, Aotearoa have got their own toilets. This is for the public, entirely for the people coming through transit back and forward, and entirely for international guests and national guests. We need it. We need the toilet. So we would really appreciate the council giving this some consideration. Instead of being against those that word, just realise the need and see the necessity for it. I'd like to say you guys have the beach and the coast and the back mountains as the backdrop. to a beautiful spot that we send a lot of our tourists ask, where do we go? We go to Hokitika, we go to Kamara, do we go up north, we go down south? Well, we send them to all places, and we send them here, and we point out the beautiful areas to look at. So, we would like a bit of appreciation for the rate that we paid over the years and received nothing back. We just put a bit back into the area. Also, we need some places pointing to a toilet at the place where the signs point to. So I'll just thank you folks. Thanks for letting me have a ride. Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you, Jared. Does anybody have any words of clarification? Sorry, want to say up, Jared?
I've got one thing to say. I'm sorry. I've got two more appointments that I'm going to have to go to. So I'm not going to stay around and listen to everyone else's comments. Unfortunately, I apologise. I've just got to close.
Right, that's fine. We've just got a couple of councillors there. There's some points of clarification.
Thanks, Chair. Just on the road closure, can you estimate how many times it's sort of closed during the winter? Roughly.
I used to work on the roads years ago, and we never closed them because we could only halt them. Now it's under a different contractor with probably up to three times a year. If there's a heavy rain, there'll be falls come down in the places, and we'll be held up for that if there's a truck stop. And sometimes it can be more than that. I mean, road closure, I just look at it as, it's 10 snowflakes, so they close the road. But the road closures that we get are more hold-ups, the vehicles broken down, trucks getting into difficulty or rock slides and things like that. So there's probably more than that. I know you'd have to get in touch with the contractor to see what's going, but we've had probably that stand mine through maybe where the tractors lined up down the road, and asking to use the toilet.
Yeah, sure.
People coming on off wild food, asking to use the toilets, or not even asking. So yeah, the road closures they're now in here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to clarify, so the $460,000 listed is being retracted.
Yes, it is.
That's interesting, because of that would have been, I'm sure it would have influenced submitters on the annual plan. We've got a lot of submissions about the cost is actually potentially half, and that kind of skews the submission process.
Yeah, it is. Well, I can tell you that I'm an engineer by trade. I've done structural engineering and pricing a lot of my life in my past and my time now. But I got busy on doing the pricing on it, and I think whatever they provided the toilet in Kamara. So I got the plans and prices from them. And the price came in at between around 140 to 150,000, laid on site, complete, ready to go and plumb up. The only other costings to that is just burying the ground and packing. So I've done all this kind of work in the past, and it was easy to work out the costings on it. I came up with a figure counting the plumbing, drainage, the sewage, tank, and the soap hole. On the plot that we've got the toilets on at the moment, the portable ones, at around 240, 250,000. There's a cable, I got in touch with power company, and there's a cable running right in front which would allow for any electrical lighting that needs to go to it. The costing was really low on that. I spoke to the engineer that was in charge of it, so won't be much involved in that. So I've got all the costing stuff, and I've come up with about 250,000 over it. So I believe that's why Simon retracted the price, and he looked into it and sort of come up with a different figure.
I can just make a quick point of clarification before Simon is another one, is that with the submissions, I need to clarify the point that the submissions in support or against the Aotearoa toilets, minimal were based on the costing. the majority of the costs were based on the percent end of the toilet. So the cost of what it was going to create a toilet system here was minimal as far as submissions. And just to clarify some point.
Thank you, Jared. Just to discuss exactly where we landed with pricing. So we have decided that because the price included a full Oasis waste management system originally, we've decided to withdraw that scope of work and reduce it just to waste tanks. Hence, the price is now set at $325, the council price that we have come up with. So that is reducing obviously the scope quite considerably. It's really around the type of toilet, but also the way we manage the waste side of it.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, regarding the breakdown of the submissions, whilst it's true that a lot of the comments were about the performance, if a more realistic and reasonable figure is really put forward, that might have changed the number and the weight of the submissions. That's really unfortunate.
I don't think we can take it as being exaggerated when it was the first figure that was pulled together for the toilets under the system. It was only with the meeting that I hear that other options were considered and looked at, and that price was viewed to be able to be pulled back from what it was set at. I think, yes, it may have brought in some more submissions. Which way they would sit, we don't know. But I think all the submissions we've got is a pretty clear direction, perception out there. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'll just check with our councillors online. Donna or Councillor Beard? Councillor Burton, if you guys got any clarification points you wish to ask? No? All right, thanks, Jared, very much.
Thank you very much.
Dawn, please.
Kia ora koutou. Thank you, Mayor Lash, councillors and staff, everyone else who's waiting around. This is a personal submission. I'm also speaking later on behalf of Bruce Watson for the region, so I'm not necessarily having two bites in the pie, but my personal submission is about a few things you'll see on the paper. The first one being the Cass Square charges. Always amazes me how much, or how little actually, the sports that use Cass Square are charged to use that ground, because I do think, I don't believe it would be full cost recovery, and in broad terms I think it should be much closer to cost recovery than it currently is. Rugby, cricket, soccer, touch 3 or 4 of the largest sports and richest sports in the country, and I would have thought that they'd be able to afford some reasonably close to cost recovery charges for the use of that ground. As a comparison, hockey, which needs to travel up to Greymouth to use the proper hockey facility up there, our one club, which is one of 5 clubs in the competition, is charged about $3,000 for the season, based on the number of teams that we play. So for use of the West Turf Hockey Stadium, so that's very much a cost recovery thing because it's owned and run by a trust. I would support an increase to the rates charged for Cass Square, but I do also support the council supporting sport and recreation in general as well. So it's not necessarily taking away that money from sport, but maybe spreading it more fairly. The second issue, waste management charges. I don't think, well, I hope the council's not thinking about it, but there's always a lot of talk on Facebook and everywhere else about making the wheelie bins bigger and stuff like that. I just oppose that. any thought of that at all. I'm now a household of 4 adults and 2 grandchildren at the present time, and we certainly create enough rubbish, but we keep it to 1 wheelie bin a day. So, sorry, not a really bit of fortnight, and it is a challenge, and I enjoy the challenge in a way to try to keep it to that level, but 1 wheelie bin's fine per fortnight. The next 2 items, museum funding and museum charges. I generally support the museum funding proposals. I think the museum is a valuable asset, not just for the district, but for the country. It houses some pretty important treasures and protects our heritage. So I think the redevelopment and the reopening of the museum is an important thing to achieve. The museum charges in broad terms, I agree with Anne Daniel's submission. I think the exhibition charges are way too high, and I think that actually exhibitions are an asset too. They should almost be paid to exhibit in the museum because they're an asset, and particularly, I know from experience, that's one reason why I've gone back to the museum on a regular basis, because that's the one thing that actually changes in the museum quite frequently, and it allows locals to take a real interest in the museum and go back again and again. I know also from almost direct or second-hand experience anyway that the after-hours staff charge of $60 an hour probably is more than what the staff are paid to come back after hours to supervise those exhibitions or openings and things. And also in terms of entry fees, I think the $25 per non-ratepayer into the museum. I think I'd like to see, I appreciate that the council needs to sort of put something in the budget, but I think you should hold off on deciding on what the fee for the museum is until it's actually opened and get a feel as to how much it's worth. But also I think that the museum, in broad terms, like most other museums around the country, should be free or close to free or some sort of donation approach so that it's accessible to all. I've put a note about the rates increase. I think it's well done for keeping the rates to 0.07% or whatever. I do think, I'm sure you kind of think as well, I suppose that the Three Waters depreciation is a factor in that, and so it's a kind of an artificial keeping it at zero approach, I suppose, but we also don't want to risk a large increase in future years because we kept it low this year. So it's a steady increase is much better than big lumps every now and then. And finally, one of the more important ones to my mind actually, I think, is the coastal hazards and the racecourse, 2 really important aspects around Hokitika specifically, and I guess for the whole district in a way too. I think the council should continue, beef up, and I think the consultation that was done at the racecourse last week was a really good start, and I think that it does help to allow members of the public and ratepayers to have input into the final decisions that the council needs to make. And similarly for the coastal hazards, I think there needs to be much more consultation with ratepayers, not just the people on the beach, but with ratepayers in general, about how the coastal hazards are managed, and it's more than just about building rock walls. And I think that the racecourse and the coastal hazard issue do actually have close ties together. I mentioned it and a few of us mentioned it at the consultation meeting at the racecourse the other day. But I do think that the racecourse needs to be considered at least as a possible option for some sort of, whatever you want to call it. If you don't like the word managed retreat, use another word, but managed retreat, or some sort of planning measures to allow us to provide for the almost inevitable encroachment of the sea into the town at some stage in the future. And I do think that for the racecourse, the retaining it for horse grazing or some sort of open space sort of use is a really good use for, might be for the next 50 or 100 years that it's used for that, but it's always a backup for some sort of managed retreat that we can move some assets if that's what we want to do, so that we don't just do some piecemeal evacuation of the town centre like I think Greymouth did after the 88 floods, and just kind of broke apart the centre of town. The real strength of Hokitika is that we do have a really strong centre CBD, you might call it, and I think there's a potential for that to still remain intact in the face of climate change and floods and coastal erosion and things too. And the racecourse could be part of the solution to that sort of thing. So I think that's about me for that. Any points of clarification?
Yes.
Thanks, Don. Just in terms of the money that you pay for the hockey, who do you pay that to?
Western Recreation Trust, which is got representatives from hockey, but also other people, mostly growing up. I don't actually even know who's on the trust. It's a trust that owns and administers the church. I think the ground itself, the place is still reserved owned by the council.
Thanks a lot, Your Worship. What do you, thanks for coming along this meeting as well, Don, what do you think the rates that it should be for Cass Square in terms of cost recovery?
Well, I don't know the actual costs of maintaining Cass Square, but I think that, and maybe a hockey turf doesn't need mowing and things like that, and so yes, it's an expensive asset to get in the first place, but actually maintenance of it is quite low, so I would think it's probably actually cheaper to maintain the hockey turf than it is to maintain a grass surface here. So it wouldn't surprise me if the overall cost of maintaining a grass ground at Cass Square could be in the several thousands, and kind of, I mean, in broad terms, on back of the envelope, because West probably gets $15,000 to $20,000 out of hockey clubs every year, and maybe the sports here at Cass Square should be paying the same sort of amount.
So that's a cooperative that's owned by the union, and then each club pays into it.
The West Turf Recreation Trust is legally kind of separate to Hockey Association. The Hockey Association runs hockey, and we hire the turf off the trust. And so we're quite separated in a lot of ways. We like to think we have input into what we decide to put there and all that sort of stuff.
Don, do you think that the $25 entry fee for the museum could backfire and turn people away?
Yeah, I do. I think that, yes. And I do think that museums do need to be accessible to all. Yes, there's an argument about competition with other businesses, the Kiwi House or whatever else might be around, sort of thing. But I think that one role of district councils is the well-being and so forth of the public, well, the ratepayers and things. And it's not just about roads and footpaths, it's about the things we really love about the place.
You know from previous years when the museum was open with charging, that was expensive to that much.
I think it was about $6 per person to get in or something, and I just spoke to my wife, who was my direct connection, I guess, last night, and she did mention that yes, it probably did actually scare a few people away. I think it was free to locals at stage too, though, so I think it's great that it's free to make days of locals and everyone do. But yes, even a $6 fee probably scared a few people away, but certainly 25 I think would scare people away.
Can I please just remind councillors that it's about clarification points and ask questions of further explanation. Do we have any points of clarification from our Zoomers? No, that's Councillor
Can you just clarify your concerns about the proposed rates model?
About the depreciation.
I'd be interested to hear a bit more about what you see in that.
I'm not sure. I'm not a big accountant sort of thing, so I don't know. I didn't make any submission about the actual rating model that you had proposed, so I don't have anything to comment about that. But I think the depreciation thing, I guess the key message from me is that we don't want to fool ourselves that we're having rate cuts kind of thing, when actually we're kind of losing something in the end as well.
Anybody have any further points of clarification with Don? Thank you, Don. It's very reasoned comments in there. Thank you for that. Fiona, please.
Good morning. So I've got an submission on behalf of the Cement League Road residents. it was a bit last minute, so we didn't get everybody's name on the submission, but everyone was spoken to, so it's definitely wanted to be involved. This has been an ongoing issue, so I purchased a property close to 10 years ago, and when I did, it was very clearly in the LTP that the road was going to be sealed up there. I based my investment decisions on the fact that that was going to be sealed in the, I think it was within the next 2 financial years. On that not happening, I came and questioned it, was told that it had been moved, the program had been moved, but it's okay, it's still in the LTP, so it's still happening in another year, and then it vanished. By that time I was working here, I didn't talk about too much noise. And in that time, I spoke with Rachel and Jimmy Smith down at the end of the playground. Turned out that they'd had the exact same thing happen with them. So when they looked at their property, they were promised that it was going to be sealed within the next few years. There was even a letter written by one of their daughters when she was at primary school to the mayor asking when this road would get sealed. That's the promise that was made. I think it was a more era. And she's now 21. So we've been asking and talking, and it goes into the TVs and it comes out again, and there's never any discussion about why it disappears. And I guess over the years, there has been a feeling of just getting brushed off. So actually during my time working here, I had one of our residents coming to do his due diligence, and he asked about the LTP, and I showed him where it said in the LTP that the road was going to be sealed. And then again, it disappeared. So some of the reasons that have been given for taking, I guess, the funding out or not reinstating the funding for Cement Lea Road, one being that it's cheap to maintain because we've already had the grader on Howhow Road. The gravel part of Howhow Road doesn't have any residents. It doesn't have a growing population. So we're up to about 20 properties now down the Cement Lea Road. That equates under the district plan to about 180 vehicle movements a day. I'm not very good at maths, might be 160. But, you know, that's a lot. And most of the properties are built on the side of the road that they want. We're in a situation with dust where it is so intense that if this was an industrial site, people would be made to wear masks. There would be a requirement for that dust to be watered down. So we've got a mine site just near us. They produce so much less dust than that road does because they have 10 bit under control. So in this last summer, obviously it was a pretty dry summer, and we heard a couple of summers ago that the reason that it wasn't an issue ongoing was just because it had been a dry summer. We're getting more and more of them, obviously, and it got to the point that it was actually invading the properties at Ballarat Terrace. They're surrounded by tar steel roads, and our dust was getting up into their properties, which wasn't well received by a friend of mine that was getting married on a day that the dust was at its worst on their front lawn. So I guess it's the dust is an issue. It's an issue for breathing. It's an issue by World Health Organisation standards. The levels are pretty intense. We're all on tank water. As I said in my submission, the reason I'm on tank water is because the council have laid the balls up in the past in the first place by allowing an unauthorised or informal easement to be taken off my water toby, so I can't use my own. I couldn't get an easement to get the water from one of my sections to my other section because other houses are already taking it. And if I build on that section now, those other houses are going to suffer so badly from water pressure because they're sharing a toby that should never have happened. So going back in time, that toby was for the property that I own, but the owners of the entire property put in a lodge. Their resource consent clearly stated that they would be tank water, but they've taken a lead from the water toby, completely in breach of the resource consent, but then council decided to meter their water. Therefore, in some way, authorising and formalising this illegal water take. So that's put us in a position, or put me in a position where I have to take rainwater, and that rainwater is, I'm fighting constantly to decontaminate it from dust. One of the residents very recently has built his house, or their house. They have built their house. During that process, the spouting got damaged, and it was up for about 4 to 6 weeks, and the spouting had to come down again and get replaced because the builder mucked it up. Anyway, when it came down, it already had about 6 inches of dust sitting in the spouting. just in that period of time. Like, that's concerning when you start seeing it. And that dust isn't just dust, it's carrying petrochemicals, it's carrying all sorts of nasties. And I think, you know, that's health issues. Then we have the actual maintenance issues. So the constant wheel alignments, forgetting rims, the people running off the road because they're trying to swerve potholes and they haven't come down that road before and it's an 80k road and next minute they're in the ditch. These things actually happen. And it seems to be damn near impossible in the last kind of, I don't know, 6 years for the road to be properly maintained. Like, it seems like no matter what they do, within a couple of days it's undoing itself again. In the past, I don't know what's happened with the maintenance regime or what it is that's been done differently, but in the past, whatever they were using would pack down quite hard and it would last, you know, a good period of time. But now it's just constant potholes. And then when it's not potholes, it's with really coarse stuff getting put down that's actually causing further damage to people's cars. So yeah, that's kind of the financial side of it. Like, it's hard on our vehicles, it's frustrating. Recently it had got that bad that one of the residents actually went and highlighted where the potholes were because they're about this deep. So you're driving and suddenly, you know, a pothole that has been like this in the morning because there is a lot of traffic and there's a lot of construction happening down there, so there's big vehicles. And this isn't going to stop anytime soon. There's still, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 properties ready to be developed. So this is an area that's building up fast. It's the only site that is sort of rural residential in the area that is a gravel road. So you've got Ridgecox Drive and Brookfield Road and Ballarat Terrace, and we're completely the exception to the rule. We're only 5 minutes drive from town, and then again on top of that we've been promised it was going to be sealed. So I guess, you know, we've put in reports occasionally, and to be honest, we've put up with it getting to a pretty bad state sometimes without actually putting in our complaints around requests for maintenance, and we're going to get better at doing that because, you know, obviously if the stats aren't there, we're not going to get heard, nothing's going to get done. So you'll be hearing a lot more from us. Yeah, so I guess in summary, like, I understand the point of view that was put to committee previously when it was talked about at LTP that yes, we're downwind of the prevailing winds and yes, we decided to build on a gravel road. But what wasn't put forward at that point in time was that each of us had bought on the basis that the LTP at the time showed us that road would be sealed, that our investment was worthwhile. We did not imagine at all, or I didn't imagine at all, 10 years later, I would still be dealing with massive potholes. And if it's not potholes, it's corrugations and it's dust, and so it swings from one extreme to the other. And on that basis, like, as far as I understand, our rates are calculated the same as Brookfield Road. So I'm not dealing with dust and all the rest of it. And I guess the other thing you could say is that, you know, that, yeah, we chose to be here. Sorry, I just got really distracted. But yeah, on the belief that was going to be a short-term process of dealing with that, not that it was going to be ongoing for so long. And it's a short piece of road. It's actually not very long. The other thing that I didn't mention was that Greg Maitland, who went on our behalf and came in and put in a submission to the LTP, he was told at the time that one of the reasons that the road wasn't sealed was because it was too narrow. And so the council had signed off previously on the subdivision that allowed the fences to be where they were, which was narrow, I totally agree. But that was all signed off, and those fences were on road reserve. Totally agree that, you know, we all know that if we have to move our fences, we will. So Greg took what he was told as gospel, and he went and moved. He went to the financial and energetic kind of response of having to move his entire fence back to his own boundary, which he did, that must have been 3 or 4 years ago now, and then nothing was ever said again. So I guess we want answers, we want action. It's like a kilometre, and it would make such a difference to so many people, but we haven't had a fair hearing. We just get brushed off. That's about all I've got to say.
Thank you, Fiona. It was an extensive submission, but really good because it actually tells the whole story for the papers in this are new to your situation, although I'm aware of it from being on council previously. So it's a very measured, structured submission. We thank you for that. There's nothing that we can't comprehend from the whole picture going forward. Has anybody got any verification of that?
Just thanks, Fiona. Just clarification on the Toby box. Whereabouts is that? Who put that in?
So that was put in when the properties were originally subdivided. I think it was like 2009. It was maybe even earlier. It was a long time ago. But if you're driving onto Cement Lane Road, the first paddock on your right, that's the only real Toby box. So that Toby box is next to one other that cuts across to Green Maitlands.
Yeah.
So he has town water, and that paddock that I own has town water.
Yeah.
But that's feeding 3 properties down the road through a tiny alkaline pipe. I do, but I'm not going to name names right now.
Okay.
The original subdivider, I'll put it that way.
And we stick here for the questions.
I'm just getting clarification on it. Thank you.
We can talk later.
Fiona, it's a familiar story of the dust corrugations and the planned dodging with the potholes. What's the cost of this 1 kilometre?
I'm not sure now. I know David and Wood ran costs when he was here, and it wasn't huge. Off the top of my head, it was around between 150, I think it was 150 max. And he'd actually done a bit of an exercise at the time, weighing that up against the maintenance costs over a few years and how long it would take to pay itself back. But that's how it went.
Just point clarification.
Mm-hmm.
What was it? Do you remember what the payback period was? 1 year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years?
No, I don't. I'm terrible, to be honest.
Councillor Vernon?
Yeah, Fiona, I know the road quite well, as you know. In your submission, you talk about the first part of the road having been sealed down to the pipeline road. I think that was an arrangement. My understanding is that the property owner on the first property actually contributed heavily to that sealing and in a co-funding arrangement with council. Is that something that the residents would be interested in?
Not at this stage, and to be honest, I raised that as can we at least have a discussion, and got brushed off from that aspect as well. So I guess we've gone so long now that we're pretty much in the camp of no, we want it funded.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Neal.
Do you think residents would be happy with the speed lower down?
Instead of sealing our road?
No. Unless there's an interim measure? Because
Anyway.
When we go slow.
We go slow anyway.
We have to go slow.
I think, there's 1 or 2 that don't, but I think that was my point, is that the excuse was that it's the speed. We all crawl down there, especially when it's raining. You can leave to work in the morning and there's a few little bumps in the road and you get home and they're opened up into massive, it just happens like that. And I understand it's levels of rainfall. They did go and clear the edges of the road of vegetation to try and get it to run off better so that it didn't fall and cause so much rustling. But it hasn't really done anything. It's made it look really ugly, but it hasn't really achieved anything.
And if I can just interject these two, is that we're not out to solve intermediary situations with temporary measures. We're talking about the sealing of a road as opposed to short-term measures of fixing something.
Absolutely.
So just keep the conversation to that, please. Any further? Sorry, Councillor Grett.
Can you just clarify the reporting that you experienced back in May? What was your experience for that?
Oh, so just with the snap send sol, so it had already been about 6 weeks of the road being quite bad, and we'd put up with it, getting worse progressively. And I kept thinking, oh, they must be due to pump, because at a point in time, West roads used to come down maybe weekly and fill in potholes when they were starting. Yeah, after about 6 weeks, I went, oh, this is getting ridiculous. I'm actually going to use the snap stem cell, which I always told myself I would because it's good for records, and then I hadn't got around to it. So on that particular occasion, I did. And then it was weeks and weeks later before anything happened. And by the time we'd had 2 more fronts of rain come through. And I think that's the other thing, like for us, every time it starts raining, you go, oh, well, here we go. The road's going to tear to pieces. And then when it's fine, then you get corrugation. So, and dust. So you just, yeah, it's just the slow reaction, even though, you know, the one time that I did go through the right process and get it all logged, kind of made me more aware of how slow the reaction time was to actually do anything about it. And then, yeah, I'd logged 3 different times where it got worse and worse and worse with different fronts coming in before an action happened. So from the first time to the last was, I think it was about 6 weeks. It's quite a long time anyway.
You had a great submission, shows what you do for a day job. You mentioned, I think it's about 14 residents there currently, and that some of those sections could be subdividable. Are there a number of other sections that currently, I'm not familiar with the road greatly, been biking up there a few times, that are vacant that could still be built in? Like, what's the total number of residents we're looking at?
So I think I've counted about 20 properties, is that right? That exists, right, yeah, and then there's ones that can be subdivided. So they're the ones that are already, have basically have a right to build, and a lot of the pipeline are doing so. So you know, it is going to grow. It is growing fast. It has grown fast in the last couple of years, and it's going to continue to do so. And it's a really sought after area because it's literally 5 minutes from town. It really is an extension of, you know, Ballarat Terrace and Ridgecox Drive and Brookfield Road, but it's just not sealed.
Thank you, Fiona, very much for that submission. Everybody quite happy with that? No more business? No, okay. Thank you, Fiona, for that.
Thank you very much.
And now we move on to the Lions Club. Nathan, please.
Morning, Mayor, councillors, you representatives, staff. Good to be back. Again, this submission is on behalf of the Lions Club of Patuka, not myself in my personal capacity, but in my capacity as president of the club. Hopefully all councillors and staff have received our submission and read it. We've tried to be as specific and detailed in our request as possible. We're putting forward 5 requests through the annual plan submission process. We believe those requests don't benefit Lions Club personally, our members personally, but they do in fact benefit the Western District Council and the residents and ratepayers of our district and visitors to our community. Just going to talk through the 5 points, and then I think it would be good to have a chance to have points of clarification, if that was possible, because there's some things potentially to clarify. The first 2 requests are for work that we'd like to be undertaken at Lazar Park playground, and that is fence and the connection of water and the installation of a drinking fountain. We're proposing that the work is funded through reserve development contributions, and we also understand that there's over $500,000 sitting in the fund within your annual plan this year. Proposed to the draft annual plan has no expenditure from that reserve fund. We do also note the staff comments that the Reserve Development Fund has to service the entire district and needs to be spread to reflect the areas in our district that contribute towards or through the creation of subdivisions, need amenities and reserves within specific townships. Within that argument, we would suggest that the users of Lazar Park are actually wider than Hokitika Township, and certainly the surrounding areas, and also visitors that are travelling through our district from southwestern in particular, who are in the temple today. So we believe that the fence and the drinking fountain can be achieved at no cost through the rates process, and we would welcome any points of clarification on that when we get towards the end of the submission. The next point is in relation to toilets at Lazar Park. So we do have an amazing facility there that now has compliant, accessible, externally accessible toilets that would be very suitable as a public toilet, especially for users of the playground. The hall is very busy, and when there are users within the hall, there are walk-ins, people that come in and ask and interrupt groups for to use the toilets, which in itself isn't too much of an issue, but it certainly is an issue when we're finding human feces and waste within the community garden at Lazar Park. And that's just because of the nature of having children that need to toilet playing in a space that doesn't have a toilet. We're not asking for any contribution to the capital development of that facility. It's done, it's available, it's completed. What we are in fact requesting is a contribution towards the cleaning of the toilets. So we would propose to open those from 9 to 5 daily, and in return we would request that there was a contribution from the Hokitika community rate, $25 per day estimate to maintain that facility, including opening, closing, cleaning, supplies, etc. Now we think that's quite modest. Our understanding is that council currently pays $30 per pan per day for cleaning of toilets. So we'd like that clarified too, but we think in terms of value for money, this is potentially a really good outcome. Council's long-term plan, which is quoted in our submission, talks about partnering with community groups and community associations to have more public toilets within our district. We know there's a need. Our community support this request as well. Again, would really love those points of clarification later on. Our fourth request is in relation to the Western Puanga Matariki Festival, which we're actually within at the moment, and clarifying council's position as a funder or a partner in relation to this. We're very thankful for council's staff time and contribution and support that's made available through regulatory functions and the use of facilities and the in-kind contributions. It is recognised and acknowledged. What we're requesting here is in response to the Festival of Lights that was held last year, where there was such significant pushback over the Lions Club of Hokitika requesting a koha for entry to the event, because it was perceived that because it was in the township of Hokitika, it should be free to enter. We would love to remove that entry fee and make it free for our community, but that does come at a cost. The lighting installation alone this year is estimated at $43,000, and we put the actuals of our event last year. We believe this event is important and significant for the Western community. It certainly doesn't benefit our Lions directly. It's of benefit to our residents, ratepayers and our visitors to our community, and also acknowledging the Māori New Year. We're requesting a grant of $10,000 plus GST, which works out on average within the Hokitika ratepayers alone, $1.89 per resident, per ratepayer per year. We went right down to 0.04 cents if it was funded by the entire district. Our fifth submission point is our request for the council to reinstate the funding that you're proposing to remove from your draft annual plan in relation to the maintenance for the Hokitika CBD, which was more than we are proposing, and in return for that, developing a relationship with the Lions Club of Hokitika, whereby the Lions Club would receive a grant of $115,000, including GST, per year to maintain the Hokitika CBD, additional to what you have within the reserves, Parks and Reserves contract. This speaks to things particularly like our monuments, art installations, things that our community groups and individuals over many years have installed. We don't want to see them end up like the wheelbarrow at Prosser's Bush, where it was so dilapidated it fell to bits and council had to cart it away. A lot of these things need maintenance and ongoing maintenance, and council now is in the position of developing maintenance agreements with groups before they install monuments and the like, but that doesn't address the historical ones that exist. We also acknowledge and recognise the staff commentary in the analysis of submissions that this should be undertaken by experts in the field. We're not proposing to take water blasters to the top marble pioneer statue or paint a town clock paint, but what we are in fact proposing is to use common sense, and where a job can be done by volunteers, that it is done by volunteers at a far significantly reduced cost to council and the ratepayer. And where a job does require expert involvement, curation, or whatever it may be, that there actually is the ability to do that within the fund. The second part of that request is actually ensuring that our CBD is, and I quote, at a gold plate standard. And we believe this is the cheapest way for council to achieve that. Do not believe that going through a process to get tenders from businesses will achieve the same value for money as a group of volunteers where there is no labour cost involved. Within that budget, of course, there is the ability to engage specialist skills, and that would include traffic management, health and safety, etc., and also any specific requirements that council may stipulate. We are proposing that as a grant and not a contract to recognise council's procurement process. Hopefully you have all received our appendice to our submission as well. It was sent this morning, and it may not have been circulated, but it will certainly help potentially with your deliberations. It's quite visual. It's photos to accompany our submissions. So it's photos. We went through the CBD last night and identified a whole lot of things that I think when you look at them, you will agree that that's not how we want to present our town. And also we've just put some examples of fencing that we're proposing at Lazar Park, the drinking fountain we're proposing there, and an image of our toilet to show that it is accessible. So didn't want to overload in our submission process because our submission was already 10 pages, but we think that those visual accompaniments might be helpful when you're talking about the maintenance of our town and the maintenance of the monuments that exist within it. And we live in a high rainfall environment, one that means that things turn green very quickly. So things do need maintenance, and we believe we're in a position to do it. And this is an opportunity really for council to partner with Lions. We appreciate the financial constraints that council has, hence our recommendations around funding this through reserves of development contributions, as well as targeted rates on the direct beneficiaries of those services. Of course, when something's applied through the general rate or the community rate, there is a differential factor, which will mean that people like the commercial businesses within the CBD, depending on whatever you decide today, are paying a higher differential than residential or rural. So it's all relative. The figures we've quoted are general and reflective of that, but we do take that into consideration that if this was applied through the Hokitika community rate, the rate increases proposed, that the perceived beneficiaries of the service would pay more than people that were located outside of the CBD. I believe I've presented all I would like to, Your Worship, and would welcome the opportunity for points of clarification.
Thank you, Latham, for that, and to councillors, that email that Latham just referred to, Di's forward that through to everybody now, so we will have that to you for the deliberations this afternoon. So thank you for that, Di, thank you for sending that through this morning. Does anybody have any points of clarification and inquire? Thank you, Councillor Davidson.
Yeah, thanks, Latham. You probably answered one of the clarifications, and that was the fencing. Obviously, there's the design has just come through on that. What about the fountain? Could you get some clarification on that, on the design there?
Yeah, well, okay, sure. Yeah, so The image that we've kind of pulled from online shows a fountain that's multi-purpose. Drinking fountain at the top, kind of a dog bowl sort of thing at the bottom, and the ability to connect a hose to it, which is critical for the community garden, where we've just come out of 2 really hot summers and bucketing water is okay, but probably not good long term. The big issue and the complication and the biggest cost of doing it is actually the connection of the water to that site, because it currently is connected off Hall and not off Park.
And the other clarification, could you clarify who's doing the maintenance now, like in other words, the community or other?
Well, I mean, probably council's in a better position to clarify that, but we know historically what is
on item 3
of the maintenance of Lazard Park.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Lazard Park is currently maintained by the Lions Club of Hokitika, volunteers and organisation, and we do receive previously $2,000 plus GST from council to maintain the site. That's just been increased last month by $500. Our request here is an additional increase to cover the cost of running public toilet at the facility. So it's all kind of spelled out in the submission, but we would anticipate that most of that cost would be on cleaning materials and supplies and things, and the occasional need to have a relief cleanup. Yeah.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you. I've got one for clarification, please. So within the Matariki Festival, within partnership with Western District Council, Museum Pitini Ngāi does everybody contribute to the same level?
So,
those the partnerships?
Yes.
For that same.
Everyone, it's not everyone is putting in an equal amount, to answer your question, no. But certainly what people do provide in some instances a cultural skill set, expertise, time, that's all measured quite differently. In terms of the Lions, we take it upon ourselves to achieve as much as we can through external funding, through grants. So we have been successful in receiving three grants towards running the Matariki Festival this year for worship. And we do know that the other organisations, we really want to identify them as partners, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to be equal in the terms of per tier or financial contribution that they make.
And so with that, you're referring to the partnership you're talking about of Ngāi Tahu and the council and museum. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah, and just to clarify, the festival itself, we try and encompass the months of June and July, and within that we encourage groups to actually run their own events, which are kind of umbrellas as part of the festival. The biggest costs sit within the Festival of Light, which is proposed to occur Matariki weekend, the Friday and Saturday nights in SCD, and that's the big costs in relation to that sit within the lighting displays, because all of that is brought in from off the west coast. So some is contributed from Super Brain and Grey Mouth, but that's where the big costs are. We can try and maximise as much as we can through grant funding, but what we're proposing and what we've put in our external funding applications is we would like to remove that. The expectation is what people perceived it as of a koha, which is not a koha. You can't demand something and then in turn say it's voluntary or it's optional. So just to finally clarify, the partners named do not all contribute the same amount financially. Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. Do we have any donors requesting any clarification? No. Yes, Councillor Phelps. Sorry.
So you would rather a grant from the ratepayer rather than just say a $2 gold coin donation for people who should, you're obviously not going to cordon off the town centre, but you'd rather that than donations?
We could still have donations as an optional thing, and we would still want that. We would still want people to contribute if they can, but what the complexity with holding an event within the CBD is people that maybe don't want to participate or engage with the event, but still want to pick up their fish and chips. That presents a challenge, and it's actually become, it's on reflection, it's something we want to remove that barrier or that issue actually. So yeah, in terms of but to answer and extend on your point, I've got a minute. If this, in most other communities, something like this would be passed to council to run.
Regarding the maintenance of the town centre, so you're proposing that this is in addition to the existing contract with West Roads?
Yeah, so I'm not sure. We had elements of this within our presentation last month for matters that it needed to be dealt with today. So some of that was removed, and we understand that there was a new contract that was let at the previous council meeting. That's in the staff notes. We're proposing that this is over and on top of. So whatever the stipulation is within the reserve, the fund, the contract, this would be additional, and it would also include, my understanding is footpaths of transport, not reserves. So there would potentially need to be a conversation about how it's actually funded from council's perspective, but we believe the total amount of 100,000 plus GST will achieve significant outcomes for this community, more so than that could be achieved by potentially specifying the scope and getting it tendered commercially. You did raise the point, and I just would like to clarify in the staff, the analysis of submissions. There's a bit of poetic license around Lions being asked to tender for the contract because that isn't quite how it occurred. The final decision was that the contract would be bundled as one, and Lions isn't in a position to tender for the Parks and Reserves contract for Westland. So at that point we said no. If the contract had have been tendered, Hokitika CBD, Ross CBD, if it was broken out like had been talked about, then we would have definitely gone forward and engaged in that process.
So to clarify then, so the missing piece from the maintenance that you're talking about is really only the gardens.
Yeah, I think so.
Could the Lions extend to the gardens as well and look perhaps to a variation contract?
Yeah, so we in the visual photos we've kind of tried to capture the issue with the gardens. Our understanding is Parks and Reserves or the contract actually talks about maintenance or levels of maintenance, not actually taking a garden that's full of bark and turning it into a garden, which is what we would propose to do, and then maintain this as well. So it would be an element of renewal that I believe is not currently provided for within the contract. And also within that we're saying like the bollards that need maintenance, the signs that are filthy that need maintenance, the footpaths that are slimy that need maintenance. So all of that would be bundled to say aspects of it are transport. We believe it we talk about it in the sense of maintenance.
So could there be a conversation extending this request to include the gardens?
Yeah, we want, as part of this, we want the gardens. Yep. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and you're just saying that this is additional to the contract, which is the existing contract within the CBD, which is basically the gardens.
Well, I assume it's the gardens, but in my experiences, a lot of that has been left to volunteers in the past to do ad hoc, and it's not sustainable and it's not right. So if council's got a copy of the specification, this is the detail, but if there was a specification of what's in a contract as opposed to what would be additional to a contract, that would be a really good good discussion to have. But we're making it on the understanding of status quo and where we think status quo is and where we would like to take the maintenance of the CBD.
So just following regarding the gardens, then you mentioned that currently the Barkham and that Lions would like to remove them and maintain it, so the Lions pay for that additionally.
Yeah. So if it turned out that it actually cost, I just don't want to go out of our remit of questioning for clarification,
yes.
but
It's getting to another level of finer detail, which is,
to pull it back.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
I appreciate the need for clarification, but I thought, when then is the opportunity to ask questions of the submitters?
And you're raising a valid point, because to actually be able to go into deliberations about this, we need to understand what the breakdown is of that.
Questions.
So can we just clarify then that you're talking about your offering of the CBD management on top of what's already contracted to West Roads? You're offering what you see that they don't do, that Lions Club will step into do.
And I'd say what they don't do contractually. Let's quantify that. It's not that I don't believe they're not. We're not here critiquing the contract. That's councils. If councils stipulate the contract is X, can they deliver to X? That's why we're saying we'd like X plus Y. We'll do the Y. If that's
So what we need to do as council is clarify the scope of the contract that West Roads currently have in CBD, and look at that, and then look at, I think, what Lions proposing as to how that works.
And just to clarify that what we understand is outside of scope is the maintenance of the things we've listed in our submission, but also provided photos for all of the memorials and art installations, sculpture along the waterfront, the riverfront, and within our CBD. We don't believe that there is provision within any contracts to actually maintain those to any standard other than mowing around them and maybe, a bit of weed spray, whereas they need to really be elevated in our opinion.
No, I think, thank you for that, Latham. I think that's some clarification we as council need to get now on the contracts and where they extend to, and how that sits up against this, and then we can consider things further with that. I'll make it the last one because we're now, sorry? Last one if I can.
It's regarding point 4 in the Plural Matariki Fest. Is this grant you're seeking in addition to applying for the National Matariki Fund?
We would see that this contribution would appropriately recognise council as a partner through successive festivals going forward, because the potential for funds to adapt or change, potentially we change a government and things, money disappears just as quick as money was created. We would like to ensure that there's at least a base fund that's secured, and that means this event has longevity, because at the moment it's really run on a lot of goodwill from the partners, and recognising that if people aren't prepared to or aren't willing to pay at the entry to the Festival of Light, then actually the cost has to be carried somewhere, and that cost would probably be better shared across the ratepayers of the Hawke's Circuit community rate.
And the application to the National Matariki Fund, if you were asked on that, you have to adjust the figures.
So we would be in a much stronger position to push forward with what we've got planned for this year and for next year if this funding is secured from council. It means we have to start clipping if it's not. And that's not trying to blackmail council, it's council's decision, how this occurs, but we've budgeted on contribution. There's a little bit of staff commentary that I think the funding that currently exists is paid to Potini Ngāi to manage, and then it's at their discretion, and that's about 5,000. So we would just like all that clarified. That's noted in this analysis of submissions, but if that fund is the same fund, half the fund that we're talking about, then I see it as that the fund increases to 10 and then it can be allocated.
If the National Matariki Fund comes through to be positive, then you wouldn't need the money from the council.
Absolutely. We haven't got the intent to then go, let's go another step. It's more, this is where we're scoping. And if we don't have budget, we need to pull back.
So the backstop.
Absolutely.
Nathan, can you clarify the other two funding grants you're going for have received?
Oh yeah, so we put in quite a few funding applications, received lottery community funding, so we received about 10 from there. We've put into West Coast Community Trust, which we hope we would have heard from by now, but have deferred their meeting until the end of June. So we've got an application in for that as well. And we've also gone to another, we've gone to the Hub Charity, and just thinking off the top of my head, the other gaming trust, which we've been successful in, $5,000. So they all add up, but they're dependent, it makes the event dependent on securing ad hoc external grants, whereas we know there's always going to be a cost to doing a lighting festival, and if we, as a community, don't want that, then that would be really good to hear, because we will chop it back. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Riley, do you have anything? Just mixed again. Okay, thank you. Right, thank you, Nathan, for that very much.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. The next submission is one that I'll be reading out. And while I'm aware that time has gone a little over with that, we've got a couple of other withdrawals, so we can manage our time accordingly. The next submission is from Rajni Patel, which I shall read out. Do I include the detail that Councillor Peter? That's probably a little bit of detail. It's an extension to the submission. He apologises for not being able to attend either personally or by Zoom, but has concerns for the cost of living and the impact the rates have on that. His submission, 3 orders, depreciation differentials. He selected option 1, status quo. Oterra public toilets, option 3, unfortunately do not build a public toilet. But his comments, a review of the fees and charges. Please, rates should be even lower for those who have single income only and depend on IRD family income. I have single income and struggling to pay the rates and groceries and other cost of living. I would be grateful if rates go lower. He does refer to house rates rising again and that they won't be able to survive with a single income. His ethnicity is that his wife stays home and cares for their child. So they are a single parent income and struggling and no support family, being that they are from overseas. So that is Raj's Patel's submission. Basically on the cost of living, but it's specifically on the rates. We cannot have anything clarified on that, so we'll take that as read and consider that in the submission this afternoon. And so we'll move on to Don, please, for your submission.
Thank you, Mayor, Councillors and staff once again. I'll just repeat that Bruce Watson put his apology in. He's got a hospital appointment that he couldn't avoid, so he would normally present on this as a submission on behalf of the Western Community Centre Incorporated, which is Hokitika Regional Theatre. So I'm the secretary of the Incorporated Society that owns the Hokitika Region Theatre, so I'm speaking on behalf of our group. Our submission is reasonably simple, but I'll expand on it a little bit. The submission really is just in support of the proposal on the annual plan to provide a grant, inflation adjusted, to the Regent Theatre, or to the Western Community Centre. I'll call it the Regent Theatre for simplicity, to the Regent Theatre, which is included also in the long-term plan. I'd also just like to start just by acknowledging John White, who passed away unfortunately earlier this week. Hope you haven't given my dates in time and you're right. But John really is, he was a life member of the Western Community Centre, and I think a really good example of really what the Regent Theatre has done and Barrett's managed to achieve what it has over the years. John was not just a businessman in town who really developed the centre of town in a lot of ways. He also contributed a lot. I think he was the chair of the Western Community Centre Incorporated for a good number of years and had a lot of influence. He is one of many actually who are responsible for making sure that we do have a wonderful little town hall out in the town there. So thanks to John White. Our President, Bruce Watson, presented to the Council just last week or a couple of weeks ago about the business plan for the Hokitika Regent Theatre, so that's not specifically about what our submission's about, and you do have some background in terms of the overall plans for the theatre. So as I said, our submission really is just in support of the grant that's proposed in the annual plan and the inflation adjustment that's provided for in the annual plan and the long-term plan. We note that there were no opposing submissions to that in the submission process this year. And we also note that it's acknowledged, the grant and the inflation adjustment is acknowledged in the staff report of the annual plan as well. I'll cut the time short for you. I don't really have anything else to add, but happy to take any points. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Any further clarification, please, for John? No, all good.
Thank you very much, John. It's excellent. Sorry? Right, so with that now, we'll break for morning tea. Now on here we're going to be back at 10:45, which is no morning teas now, so it's back on for time to reconvene at 11. Our next submitter, Bede O'Connor Federal Funds, has moved to be the last presenter today. So Fiona Anderson from the Pony Club will be speaking at 11:10. So we will be required to wait for her if she's not here prior. So we can break for morning tea. If our submitters would like to join us, you're more than welcome to next door. Right, so we will break and come back. Reconvene at 11. Ollie's on Zoom again. Are we audible? We are. We're just waiting for Fiona Anderson to arrive, who was due to speak at 11:10. But what we could do is perhaps start with Mel Anderson, who's not listening. She's zoned out on her laptop. Hello.
I actually just got a message from Fiona. She thought her time slot was 10 o'clock, that she might have missed it, so I've just said come now.
Right. All right. So Mel, if you want to present now, we'll do yours, and then it might give the other Fiona some time to get here. No worries. If that's all right with you. So we'll switch you two around. Okay.
Yes. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for allowing me time to present my submission for the 23-24 annual plan. Submission has arisen following an email from a resident down in Jacksons Bay about the ongoing issues down here. So in short, it's about ensuring the health and safety, relieving some congestion, and creating a better area for our visitors that utilise that space, as well as receiving some sort of revenue in return of that. The submission this submission is based on previous work that has been done, looked at previously, including the boat trailer car parking, as is done in other areas around New Zealand where recreational boat users actually pay a fee to enjoy their recreation. The current boat ramp is not fit for purpose. During the heat of the season, there are a couple of times a week vehicles and boats are being pulled out using local tractors and local residents down there. Other than that, if there's any points of clarification on the submission, which I know you have all read, I can point to those now.
Just to clarify, you're wanting us to support the installation of the fit for purpose boat ramp, boat trailer park and fee system based on a previous report?
Previous work was done in gaining some funding through TIF, the Tourism Infrastructure Fund, for the boat trailer car parking. The boat ramp is not fit for purpose, and I believe probably back in about maybe 2016, designs were, might have been after that, designs were actually done for a fit for purpose boat ramp. The other thing is the boat ramp where it's situated could be better situated further, I've got it on my screen, but where the gold mark is, if you go further to the top of the page, that area there may be a better launch area. The only issue is that the water depth in that area is a little bit shallower, so may need to be dug out in order to allow safe access for boats out to the deep water.
So can you please also clarify, Mel, how much discussions happened with the locals that live and work and historically always use the place?
I don't have that information. I believe the records may be here at council on that.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Smith.
Mel, have you got any estimates of the cost?
No, I do not.
What about the cost of the parking?
That will be included in the TIF fund application and subsequent work that was done by council staff members.
Just to clarify, has that, one more question for you, maybe a question for Simon, is that confirmed in the TIF application?
Just one clarification. If you recall, we put in 4 applications for 4 car park upgrades. Jackson Bay was a sacrificial land in terms of priority order, so that's what I received because of funding constraints.
That's right.
So it's not currently being executed now.
That's a clarification.
Yeah, thanks.
Any further?
Oh, yeah, just, yeah, Mel, just, is any clarity on the, evidence of how many times people get pulled out of their work?
So according to the email I received from a local down in the area, in the height of the season, it's a couple of times a week at least, and that's when the locals are called in without those that are already on site.
If I could just clarify that to Councillor, it's actually been something that's been happening for 20, 30 years, pulling folks of vehicles out that go to the wrong place. So just to clarify, it's been a long-term situation.
Thank you. And just the other one, just clarity on the design.
Again, I believe that work has been undertaken by council staff members, and so those records may be held here.
Councillor Phelps.
Point of clarification, so when you say locals pulling people out, that's just them being nice, basically, isn't it? Yeah. So, I mean, I just know you go to some four-wheel drive tracks near farms and there's just a very explicit sign if you get stuck with their own expense. If you were charging for use of the ramp, do you have a rough idea of what the payback period would be, or would it be around cost minimisation?
I think it's more about cost minimisation, and also people that use it should actually pay for it as well.
Yeah.
I don't have the costings that were previously done, I'm afraid.
Yes, Councillor.
You mentioned the Lake Runner pay as you go. Did you get from the Great District Council how much that?
No. No, this was a late submission following the email I received, so it was collated in order to put it in front of council and to think about from a strategic perspective, maybe not just even that specific, but the wider Jacksons Bay area.
How long would you need to get some further details? And I appreciate it was a last minute or late. How long would you need to get something more comprehensive together?
I don't know whether or not that's my job to do that. I believe it's the council staff.
How long may it take one to put some more costings together? So there's some more, comprehensive.
Possibly not too long if the.
Just through your worship, it really depends on design. So that in itself, it costs money to get a proper design done, resource consent process, etc., etc. So we haven't got a final design that I'm aware of to get it costed. I think we do it in deliberations.
Thank you. Thanks, Mel. Any further? Right, Councillor Burden, do you have any points for clarification? Yep. Anything further for Mel?
It's a burning one. The majority of these users, would you say they're West Coasters or people popping in from Wanaka and Queensland and the like, 50-50?
Yeah, anecdotally, I haven't spent a lot of time down there, but reports are there are a lot of out-of-town users. So it's a way of them contributing to the resources that they use.
If not clarify that, it's around 80 to 20, 80 more outsiders. It's getting seized by Councillor, we have our next submission just looking to Fiona. Hi, if you can like to come straight up, you can have your submission now.
Oh, thank you very much.
Would you like your submission?
No, it's all right, I've got it right here. So my submission was about the racecourse, of course. And it was really just about the amount of money that's in the plan for this financial year, tagged for the development, when I don't think we really know what's happening up there yet. The funding, I presume, is coming from Kāinga Ora. I don't know why there needs to be such a rush before the community consultations actually occurred and there's an actual plan on what the money's being spent on. We don't want to rush through any kind of development in our town that's going to end up being a mistake or something that's not particularly well thought out. I know there's a need for social housing and for retirement, people for farm housing. I don't think we need 120 houses or whatever's planned for the site. And I think that we need to consider current users running for the disabled, probably needs more than 3 hectares for grazing. I'm just wondering if the public can have a bit more visibility on what's actually planned and who is putting the funding in. Yeah, that's probably about all I've got to say. But I definitely stand for RDA. It's been around for 10 years now, and it serves a wide-ranging sector of the community, especially those who are disabled or youth at risk, kids with behavioural problems, young girls who, you know, probably don't participate in sport that much, but they're out at the racecourse all the time, looking after the horses, being social in a non-competitive but active outdoor setting. It's hard to capture all the users up there, but I think we do need to take that into account as well. So yeah, that's probably all I've got to say.
Thank you, Fiona, for that.
That's all right.
Anybody want any points of clarification for Fiona?
Not for me, thanks, Fiona.
Point of clarification, yeah, what's the, in terms of the usage of the racecourse at present, how much of it would the RDA currently utilise?
Well, they use probably about 5 hectares for grazing now, I'd say. Yeah.
So that's not the land down at the foot of the Boys Brigade sort of hill?
No, that's only a small area where they actually do the riding.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they've got about 15 horses, I think. So, yeah, they do need a reasonable amount of land for grazing. I mean, they can probably use less, but they might have to get rid of some horses or something like that, or cut down the numbers that actually do. And they've got a waiting list at the moment. Yeah, so I think there's, I mean, Jane knows a lot more about it than me. I mean, I started it, but I stood up here 10 years ago asking for some land.
No, so just, yeah, part of
I was like, what's
that
RDA?
land at the bottom of the hill, that's yours, like that belongs to RDA? Or
That's leased by RDA as far as I know for 25 years. I think.
from the racecourse?
From the council, yeah. But I mean, it's not just Hokitika as well, like there's kids coming from all over this place and adults. Yeah, pretty amazing.
No, you guys do.
These guys,
Really
you know,
cool.
like it's really cool. Yeah, especially here for them to be able to have that. And the reason I set it up was because I had a whole bunch of kids and parents ringing me asking for riding lessons for disabled kids, and I was like, well, why doesn't the West Coast have an RDA? Kaikohe have an RDA with big indoor arena. Other small towns have RDAs, and the council provides quite a lot of land for them to have their RDAs on. It's a really great thing for our community to have. Yeah. So yeah. Thank you.
Just clarifying your submission, it seems to me that what you're saying is what's in the annual plan doesn't match the the engagement that's going on.
No, I think there's some good engagement going on. It's just that there's quite a lot of money tagged in the plan, and we don't really know what that's for. Yeah. And I'm sure there doesn't need to be a lot of work on these sites. It's basically just a big weekend. Yeah. I don't know what it's for, and I presume that the council's looking at it from the council's, which is a great opportunity. But whether we need to develop that much of the site, I'm not entirely sure. Yeah. And so the consultants are telling us, Hokitika, even though we need housing and social housing, yeah, and not in a growth phase in terms of the populations.
Fiona, can you just clarify for me, have you been to any of the consultation evenings we've had tonight?
Yes. I've been to
it was spoken about the funding and how it came about and what it's actually for.
They didn't go into specifics. So they said they didn't talk about the money that's in the annual plan at the one I was at anyway, and exactly what that funding is going to be used for and when. We were still very much in a discussion based on what it could look like. Yeah.
And then could Simon clarify what the 1.4 million is in the annual plan?
Through deliberations, we're happy to do that.
Thank
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Fiona.
Yeah.
Right, Josie's due here at 11:30, which is 5 minutes to go, so Sonia won't be here presenting, and Greg Maitland's pulled out of presenting as well. So we could ask Patrick, Councillor Phelps Patrick Phelps to...
If you're asking, yes.
He's presenting as Patrick Phelps, not Councillor Phelps.
And I won't be voting on certain items of the plan, and I won't be talking during certain... Yeah, of course, yeah.
Question, the people that have withdrawn, is it due to the timing that didn't work for them? Do we know?
Sonia had an appointment come up, arose that took her away from presenting.
But people weren't complaining about there only being daytime sessions? I don't mean individuals, the general comment.
Well, I'm not sure about Stu. Most of the ones I know of that have can't present have been for reasons other than what time of day it is. Who's that? Oh, we just need to get them in. So what was their name?
Stuart Paul also had another commitment, so
Yeah.
And clarify here as a councillor, not as councillor Phelps, as a private citizen at Phelps, and we've sorted all of that out. So, good morning. I've put some notes down just because it's easier to speak off paper sometimes than off the cuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, friends and family, if I may go so far, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this submission, which I shall take as read. I'd just really like to distill my submission down to the following point, and that is that this council, in effect, though I accept not in intent, but in effect, I stress, is in the process of continuing to spend money at the expense of the general interest of the population for the wants and needs of specific groups within the population. Looking around the chambers this morning or at the council generally, I don't see a world that's reflective of the variety and the diversity within this district of 9,000 people, whether it's elected councillors, staff, people who've written on the submissions or spoken quite finely to them this morning with passion and dedication for their causes, or their values. To put it in context, I think we've received about 50 submissions, notwithstanding the many of which have come from Gloria Vale. If you take those 50 submissions in their sincerity and assume that they come from individual people, that would account for just over 0.5% of the population of this district. The number of people who've spoken this morning, and I'll probably stress the number that haven't been able to turn up due to other commitments, constitutes about 1/5% of the population of this district. And rough observations, I'd say 90 to 95%, parking hard, 90 to 95% over the age of 40. This system doesn't really capture very well or serve the wide range of people. So the question I would like us to consider as a district, as a council, do you listen only to those that have the faculty, the means, the motivation to engage in this process, pull on the levers of the machinery of local government, so to speak, or do you try and spend as little as possible through the council, which doesn't adequately, I think, serve the wide range of the population? And when you look at this annual plan and other spending, not ask the question, what are the things we could do with, but ask the question, what are the things that we can't do without? There's $6 million of spending in this plan that needn't occur. I appreciate some of it is taxpayer funded and not all of it is finalised, but to me that represents $6 million in potential savings for the ratepayer, or at the very least, the taxpayer. No money can be spent at nobody's expense. Someone somewhere is paying. We could indeed reduce debt, we could lighten the load on rates, or we could simply focus on sealing a few roads, as we've heard this morning, prudent management of finances. But I want to take a moment just to refer to some of the specific aspects of my submission, if I may. I've probably driven or been driven between Hokitika and Christchurch more times in my life than I would care to remember, but only on the last 3 or 4 trips have I been conducting a stocktake of public toilets. Now, I've noticed that in terms of municipally funded toilets, you go an hour between Kamara and Arthur's Pass, Western District, Selwyn District, and then another hour again to Springfield, also municipally funded. In the Canterbury High Country, there's at least 2, if not 3, public toilets that are funded through the taxpayer, through the Department of Conservation. Given Otira is in the cradle of Arthurs Pass National Park, which I learned the other day stretches right down through the Hakens actually, where those belted galloways are, fully owned and operated at the taxpayer's expense for the benefits of biodiversity, outdoor enthusiasts and owners of international airlines. Effluent is produced in the form of human urine excrement, and I would ask that this council at least considers asking the Department of Conservation if they would perhaps buy a plot of land from this council and fund those toilets more fairly and widely across New Zealand's tax base, rather than having it fall narrowly on the shoulders of Western District, who already have to endure the burden of visitors for the benefit of the visitors and those who service them. In the same vein, I've noted in my submission a lack of justification for spending on welcome signs and cycle trails due to the widespread diffuse costs and the concentrated benefit. There seems to be a widespread and prevailing belief that any such expenditure is simply good for attracting visitors and therefore good for the economy. One of the reasons I choose to live in this part of the district, it has happily got fewer people than most other parts of the country, so bringing crowds here is not something I really want my rates spent on, nonetheless, that's the economy. In the year ending 31 March 2019, visitor spending, domestic and international, at its peak in Westland, reached about $330 million, third of a billion. Of this, about 43% was spent in the accommodation and food service sector. Most indicators will show that this is the lowest paid, least productive sector in New Zealand's economy. About a quarter was in retail, which not quite on par with accommodation and food service, but still fairly low paid and fairly low productivity. And after that, the largest area of visitor spending was in transport, about 22%. Incidentally, New Zealand's largest source of carbon dioxide emissions and second largest source of emissions after all, after methane from biogenic agriculture. Spending outside hospitality, retail and transport amounted to about 8% of all visitor spending. Regarding GDP generally within Western District, again 2019 figures when visitor numbers and spending was at their highest, accommodation and food services and retail sectors combined amounted to about 15.5% of GDP. For context, agriculture, forestry and fishing accounted for 19% and manufacturing for about 10%. Why should people who make a living putting cups on cars at 5:30 in the morning be paying for those who make a living putting cups on coffee tables at 7:30 in the morning? For that matter, why should someone who makes their money butchering cattle pay for someone who earns theirs grilling steak? I want to clarify that I'd be equally opposed if the reverse were true and the subsidies were the other way around. So far as I can see, the current state of affairs has the rating office taking money from the sectors in which people produce the most and are the most productive and transferring it to the sectors in which people are least productive. Travellers need places to eat and sleep. There will always be businesses to be run or work to be had in these sectors. And the council, in my view, would be best to let people figure out for themselves where to best deploy their savings, their borrowings, their earnings and their labour. I've included figures regarding the cycle trail, which I think also indicates that the benefits of the cycle trail are highly concentrated and the costs widely spread. If someone can sincerely tell me why a 25-year-old woman driving a forklift or working in payroll at Westland Milk should spend otherwise discretionary income that might go towards a gym membership, a pair of boots or a bottle of vodka, should be made to pay for a cycle trail or a marketing executive visiting from Auckland for the weekend, I'd like to hear it. Or at the risk of having the executive preference for a 25-year-old woman, why a 65-year-old with a bit less money than they anticipated that they may have as they near the end of their career, trying to figure out how to clear their mortgage, repile and re-roof their house, should be made to pay for the same thing. I'd like to hear it. I think the same ethical rule can really be run over most of the spending items that I've listed in this plan as questionable or disposable. So in my view, the options are there. It's entirely up to each of you what you choose. If someone asks why their rates have gone up or why they're so high, please don't say that there was nothing that could be done or nothing that could be removed from the plan. Thanks for your time. I'm happy to take any. I've written questions, but we'll be remaining next point of clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Right, any points of clarification, please, for Patrick?
And I won't be deliberating on New Year's in the afternoon, so quietly. So, yeah.
And that's something I make crystal clear to the councillors too, is that as Councillor Phelps is well aware that by submitting as himself that he can't partake in deliberations to do with the points that he's submitted. Which will be the same to the end.
No, he weighed up, he took time to make that decision. That's his.
The option was laid out in front of me, and it's anyway.
So any points of clarification, Patrick, please?
The suggestion that Doc funds the interior toilet.
Yeah.
Is that like?
That would be which conservation minister up to now? There's been 3 in the last year. Willow Jean Prime. I feel like probably wouldn't make all the way to her desk, but I would think at least picking up the phone and calling Mark Davies or one of his counterparts would be a question at least worth. I mean, if you want to make the argument that the visitors are coming here of national and international significance and all the rest of it, presumably to see. It wouldn't be for the bustling, whining and dining of Aotearoa, I wouldn't imagine, of a Thursday night. So it would be for hunting, tramping, outdoors activities and that sort of stuff. You go to Lake Pearson, you go to Cave Stream, there's DOC-funded toilets there. I think it's worth at least asking the Department of Conservation before we have that rusted onto our annual bill, because if we incur that capital cost, there's also a higher chance that we're going to incur the ongoing maintenance costs. So it would be worth at least approaching DOC to consider that. Good question. I think it's fair for 5 million people to pay for a national park. It's not a regional park, something that services that provokes. I mean, if there's pollution, excrement, whatever you want to call it, at trackheads and things like that, that's degrading a national asset. Yes, concentrated burden does fall on people in Aotearoa, but I think, and as was alluded to today, it's not just the gateway to Westland, it's the gateway to the whole West Coast. I don't think we're going to have much luck leaning on Grey District or much less Buller District to pay for these toilets, but I think there is a fair argument to be made that the Department of Conservation and taxpayer should pay for those toilets if anyone's going to. I mean, put it in context, Selwyn District's got 70,000 residents or something like that. We've got 9,000. The ratio of visitors to residents is, astronomical. It's probably one of the highest in the country. So.
Point of clarification, and also thank you for entertaining us. It's nice to have a chuckler around the table and such a day. Not about that. In terms of the process, you say that people don't engage with it and can't engage with it. Obviously, your stats probably support that. Could you clarify options that you see might be a better option, or how that process could better capture 99.5% of the district?
Yeah, I think, I would imagine if you were to walk into the smoko room, say, Silverford Farms, like again, I'm imagining here, Western or anywhere else, you would find a large number. I would say the majority of people that aren't even aware that this is even happening right now, this process. There's as much chance of some people coming into these chambers as there is of any of us going and being on the chain at Silverford Farms tomorrow morning. I'm talking to a friend of mine last night who regularly reads the paper and does get quite irate when he looks at his rates bill and all the rest of it. He said, well, what's the point of submitting? I've done it before, you get an automated reply, no one really cares and that sort of stuff, and it's fairly obvious. You've got to have the means and the time and that sort of stuff to actually run for office and then on the plan and come in here during a working day when you've got all your other priorities going. So, whereas if we simply leave it to other people to figure out for themselves what they want to do with their money rather than trying to take it off them and figuring out how to best spend it, I think it's everyone a chance to actually decide for themselves what they want and cut out the middleman, so to speak. But yeah. I'm not trying to do a clever job.
Anything further for
Patrick Phelps, New Zealand citizen. 785078 passport number. DL41041 on my driver's license.
Right, okay, anything further? Right. Thank you very much.
In summary, the Constitution is the vibe, no doubt. It's just the vibe.
Oh, okay, so we're just waiting for Josie.
We should do a 5-minute break.
Have you heard from Reid?
I haven't heard. I've been talking to his associate James, and he thinks that he may be on the road now.
Right.
He was moving stock, and I haven't heard anything from Josie.
Okay, thank you. It's not like Josie to be late for something, so we can take a 5-minute break. or a 2-minute break, depending on when Josie comes through here. Yeah, so we'll just adjourn for 5 minutes. Unmuted, okay. So we'll reconvene back again, and James, thank you for agreeing to start the submission off. We presume that Pete will arrive at some stage, but not too sure where he is. So James Sutherland, Federated Farmers, is going to present on behalf of Feed, the Federated Farmers submission. Does anybody know where Paul just?
I think he just popped out of the room.
Out of the room? If you can just wait 2 seconds there, James, we're just waiting for Councillor Letchworth to come back, and then we'll start. And here he is. Thanks, James. Throw the ball into your court there to start.
Thank you. Your Worship, Councillors, Federated Farmers West Coast thanks the Westland District Council for allowing us to voice our submission on the draft annual plan for 2020-24 year. For those who don't know, I'm James Sutherland and I'm a policy advisor for the West Coast. And hopefully Bede should be joining us shortly. He's probably stopped the road. We will be presenting the views of the West Coast Federated Farmers members on this annual plan. We acknowledge the hard work that Council staff have put into this annual plan and have found the outcomes that Council has approved for consultation to be concerning. Council proposed a 0.7% rate increase down on the long-term plan proposal of 10.5%. Council would have been expected for a round of congratulations for the hard work in the middle of a cost of living crisis, with record high inflation not seen since the 1980s. However, this is not the case. Instead, Council has reduced urbanised targeted rates across the whole region and increased rural rates well over 25% in some areas of your district. This is a clear assault on farmers and Council's mismanagement of their rating responsibility. We acknowledge that Three Waters is a difficult town for councils across the whole country. With not knowing if the reforms are going to go ahead or not, it is totally irresponsible for Council to shift the burden of water rates and rates that would have been used for the urbanised infrastructure to be shifted to the rural ratepayers to subsidise. This is something they don't benefit from their own properties and should not be required to pay for it. We do not support any of the Three Waters depreciation funded through the Uniform Annual General Charge. The way in which Council has chosen to depreciate the assets of Three Waters is concerning. Many councils around New Zealand have not done what Westland has done. Why it is that you may ask? Well, we're already on 2.0 version of the Three Waters reforms, and we're most likely going to be seeing a version 3.0 soon. All of these reforms push back timeframes and implementations. It could be another 3 to 5 years before council assets are really taken off your hands. Not to fund depreciation at all in time creates issues for ratepayers and users of the system, who are going to miss out in the long run without proper upkeep of these assets. We urge council to continue to fund Three Waters in its current state with a targeted rate and move towards more of a user pay system. This is more equitable and means that investments into the infrastructure continue to make the network resilient to natural disasters and events. Council does have room under the current rating system to increase targeted rates to fund depreciation to get through these early stages of reforms. Section 101(3) of the Local Government Act states that funding of the local authority must meet the need from the sources that the local authority deems to be appropriate. However, it does say that there needs to be a distribution of benefit between community and identifiable parts of the community who will benefit from the activity undertaken. It is important that council acts in a fair manner when rating their residents. We argue that only urban residents would benefit from the water infrastructure, and thus it should be a user pay system. We also believe water rates should not be reduced, as it's important for those who reside in a particular area, ensure that enough capital is flowing in from the users to council to maintain this service. We ask council to consider the impact from a benefits principle on the rating system and how differential impacts of the system can have on rural ratepayers. We are against the reduction in water charges. The reduction from $2.30 to $1.15 is a 50% reduction and should not be subsidised by any other ratepayer other than the urban. It would benefit from such reduction. We urge council to continue with the current system. We are also urging council to to continue with rates as currently funded, but impose a rates cap for council on rural ratepayers. We feel that council has created an uneasy situation where we feel that council may try and fabricate any future rate rises under the manipulation of the system, passing the burden onto ratepayers, which is unfair. We are advocating for a rural rates cap of 10%, which is self-imposed and cannot be surpassed by council unless it has been consulted on with the community. I would like to note this is double the rates cap that council currently has, which is 5%. We feel that this keeps council transparent and honest in its highest paying ratepayers in the community. We welcome any opportunity to work with council to implement this. If council does not decide to keep the status quo, we're going to press the council to name what benefits a rural ratepayer in Hokitika, who has the same services as they did last year, why he must pay almost 30% more on his rates. What is council providing this ratepayer with to justify this increase? We have tried to answer this question ourselves and really have struggled with it. We hope council can enlighten us and our membership in Hokitika about this. We are cautious of council engaging in the carbon credit trade. It is not appropriate for council to be engaging in the trade to offset future costs. Offsetting emissions for the landfill is appropriate use of these credits, and as a tangible asset is concerned. Council should never have the role to engage in the trade of these credits beyond the use of the landfill and creates an argument that is going beyond the role of what council is prescribed as under the Local Government Act 2002. Council is gambling on assets of that nature that goes beyond your role to regulate the land use changes and / adaptation, which falls well outside the brief of purchasing these credits. We understand there is an argument that farmers should be able to increase productivity or stockage if capital is tight to pay for an increase in bills. However, these rates are in some of the most pristine environments that council administers. An increase in stock numbers would have a perverse impact on the environment. Many of these are intergenerational farms who have the understanding protecting the environment enables the next generation to farm the land. We would also like to see the council in future draft annual plans to show in-depth rate examples of what a rates rise would look like in dollar terms for each group within the council, such as urban, lifestyle, commercial and farmland. This would enable ratepayers to better understand what they pay for and enable a more transparent approach from council. For example, the Clutha District Council does this extremely well, which enables a better formed ratepayer base. Overall, council has a lot to do on this draft annual plan in its current form. We cannot support what council has proposed with rates. You have not understood the economic climate that the country is currently in, and passing the burden further to rural communities further isolates council and its ratepayers. We will be willing to work with council to present a more rounded, economically managed and fair annual plan. We thank the council again for the opportunity to voice your submissions, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, James, for that. Excellent. You could step in and cover off the submission. Any points of clarification for James Pace?
No. Yeah, step one. James, hi, Patrick Phelps here. I hope you can hear me.
Yep.
Just a question. You alluded to the fact that a few other councils around the country are doing what this council's doing with the Three Waters depreciation. Are there any others, and if so, how many?
I looked at the South Island councils just for comparison, and most of them are funding depreciation. If not, they're funding about 80% of the depreciation. So then it's still enough is in the back pocket in case these reforms do get pushed out with a change of government.
Okay. And just on the topic of comparison with other district councils or TLAs, you mentioned the rates cap. Is that something that exists anywhere else around the country?
Yes, Clutha District Council has a self-imposed rate cap of 4.14%. And there are also rates caps, I believe, in Waimakariri, but most of these have been exceeded this year due to the rate of inflation.
Yeah, and those caps, sorry, just to clarify for one final point, are they, you mentioned a rates cap for rural rates, are those, the other districts that have those, are they across the board or are they in sort of targeted rating areas?
No, a rural rates cap, I believe, has never been in a council. It's just normally a rates cap, but obviously having the two rates caps gives council a bit more ability to ensure they have enough capital flowing in.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I read this week that the Beef and Lamb New Zealand have done a study that shows that the true rate of inflation for the rural sector is 16% rather than 7% for the country. Is that correct?
Yep, you're indeed correct there. That report obviously came out after I submitted the plan, but if councillors haven't read it, I definitely urge you to do, because it seems a pretty dire outlook on farmers. But the thing to note is that West Coast is a bit more different to the rest of the country, with the Westland Dairy Company. Has got better payouts than Fonterra currently.
Off the back of that. That rate of inflation or on-farm inflation, I think I've heard it referred to as, is there any data on any increases in on-farm income and how that has kept pace, exceeded or failed to keep pace with the rate of on-farm inflation? Have you got any information there?
Sorry, you might just have to repeat that. That was just quite staticky, sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry, just you mentioned the on-farm inflation being 16%. Can you hear me there?
Yeah, I can hear that. I didn't mention that in my submission, but that's what the Beef and Lamb report that came out after the submission was lodged is 16%, yeah.
Yeah, I was curious as to whether the rate of on-farm income has fallen short of that inflation, kept pace with it, or where farm incomes are in comparison to on-farm inflation, if there was any specific information there.
So the largest contributor to the on-farm inflation is the rises in having to service their debt. So it's all very much debt dependent. I think that contributes to about 80% of the inflation on farm, along with fertiliser costs.
Okay.
Any further questions? Points of clarification for James?
Now, I know that Bede is still on the road, but he would very much still like to contribute.
We're going to be adjourning for lunch shortly, James, because we start our deliberations at 1 o'clock.
Right.
So how far away do you think he is?
I'm just trying to get texts out of him at the moment, but he is obviously...
He's driving.
Yeah. It's a good thing to do. Text him while he's driving.
Yeah.
We just pass a motion.
Do you mind if I give him a call very quickly? It'll probably be about a minute.
No, that's fine, James. So
Then get James and Emma coordinate, and we'll adjourn for lunch.
yes, and then Bede could perhaps speak to us for 5 minutes at 1 o'clock. Everybody's happy with that?
Yep.
Right.
Do we need to move a motion or is it?
No, we'll just adjourn for lunch. James, can you still hear me, or have you switched off? All right, so we'll adjourn for lunch and let Bede arrive, presumably. And if Bede does arrive, we will perhaps give him 5 minutes at 1 o'clock and then go into the deliberations. Everybody's happy with that?